right. Everybody ready? Okay. Mayor Jane here, giving the latest briefing. As you all know, we're looking to do this at 11:30 and 5:30 every day. The latest predicted path of Hurricane Ian shows that it may land a little further south than first anticipated, which wouldn't be good news for our neighbors, but would be for the Tampa Bay area. You know, having the storm basically stall right across from Tampa Bay, as we discussed earlier, would really be catastrophic with the amount of rain, the storm surge, and no place for the water to go as we are already saturated. So we have, our plans have gone very, very well. Our preparations, our Parks and Recreation passed out almost 100,000 sandbags. We opened up 16 Parks and Rec locations for children whose parents had to go to work. Those facilities have all been closed down for the storm. The evacuations, I've been in contact with FDOT, talked to Greg Slater with Thea, and they have seen record numbers of people up on the Selman Expressway going out eastbound. I-4, as you know, is some traffic congestion going east, and the same thing with north. So people are heeding the warning to evacuate to safer grounds. So we are doing well. We have had the officers go to all of the mobile home parks in the evacuation zones. So we feel very confident about that. People are going to the shelters. We're getting them transportation there. So we are prepared. We are having, as I stated before, conversations with the fuel suppliers to make sure that we've got those up and running. We had our code enforcement go out. We have just over 100 ALFs and nursing homes in the city of Tampa. They went around to each one of those, not only ensuring they had the generators, but that those generators worked. We offered fuel for some of the ones that were a little low, and the city had agreed to top off those generators in the event that they need those. Tico is here to talk about some of the earlier notification that they were going to shut down some of their facilities, and so they will talk a little bit more about that. But first, I will have Chief Tripp, our emergency manager, come up and give a few details.
Thank you, Mayor. Barbara Tripp, Fire Chief for Tampa Fire Rescue, as well as the emergency manager. As the mayor has stated earlier about the changes with Hurricane Ian, that still does not stop us from preparing for the worst. We will receive some rain, we will receive some wind, so we still need to make sure that everyone is prepared. If you are still in the evacuation area, you must make sure that you follow the rules that we want you to evacuate safely. This storm could make another change, which we're hoping it doesn't, but you just need to make sure you're prepared. Once again, we have been communicating with local agencies for assistance. We have been communicating with the community. We have a lot of resources out there available to the community, so we want to make sure that everyone take heed to the resources that's available. Make sure you take care of your loved ones, your kids, and your pets. We have shelters that are open for special needs. We have shelters that are open for families to make sure that you are secured. We don't know what this storm is going to bring. And as the mayor stated earlier, it shifts. Good for Tampa, you know, but once again, we just hope it doesn't shift again. And once the storm do start coming in, once again, 911, first responders will not be able to respond if the winds or sustained wind are greater than 40 miles per hour. So for your safety and our safety, we ask you to continue to pay attention to the news and all the media that's out there for you all to stay safe as well as keep us safe. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of points to add to what Mayor Castor and Chief Tripp mentioned. Our school shelters are up and running, and they are being staffed with Tampa PD school resource officers. So the security at the shelters is of the utmost priority for those that have evacuated. We actually did visit Zone A and Zone B, which were the two mandatory evacuation zones, 3 times. So we're still urging residents to evacuate safely. There is still plenty of time to evacuate to one of the shelters. The transportation options are available until 7 p.m. this evening. That is Hart and Uber, which are both free of charge. So if anybody wants to get to one of the shelters, we are obviously have those opportunities available to us. The one thing I do want to mention is that since the state of emergency was announced, that any of the crimes that are committed in the burglary or theft realm that are committed during the state of emergency, that the penalties are enhanced. And I just want to stress that at this point, that if you commit a burglary or a theft during a state of emergency in Hillsborough County, a burglary would normally be a second-degree felony, and it will be upgraded to a first-degree felony. And a third-degree felony, theft or burglary, would be enhanced to a second degree. So I just want to stress that we are obviously protecting our businesses and our residents' homes from burglary and theft, and I just would recommend that people do not commit those crimes because of the enhancements. The other thing I just want to mention as far as the law enforcement is concerned is that if you are arrested for one of those crimes, you also have mandatory appearance in front of a magistrate before you're able to bond out, and that's going to be delayed as the courts will be closed for the next couple of days. So again, Tampa PD is ready, willing, and able to assist anybody that needs last-minute preparations, but we do, stress that we have resources available to you, and it's very important that anybody that is still in the evacuation zones stay abreast of any changes that happen with the track of the storm. I'd like to announce Councilman Joseph Citro here, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Chief. I'd like to thank all of the family members of the City of Tampa. All the departments have been working very, very hard to keep the citizens safe. But I'm going to have to repeat the words of Chief Tripp. If you are in a mandatory evacuation area and this storm takes a different course, please, if the winds get too strong or the streets get flooded, first responders may not be able to get to you. Please, if you're in an evacuation zone, please evacuate now. And the City of Tampa is working hard to keep you and your family safe.
Hi, Sherry Jacobs, Tampa Electric. Tampa Electric is bringing in thousands of workers to help restore power after the storm passes. We have 3,500 line workers, tree trimmers, and damage assessors. Some of them have already arrived, and the rest will arrive tomorrow to help us restore power as quickly and safely as possible after it's safe to work when the storm passes. Earlier today, we were evaluating the risk in our downtown electrical grid, and we were considering doing targeted interruptions in 2 parts of downtown, the western side and the southern tip. Happy to report that with this change in Hurricane Ian's track, the risk of storm surge has diminished significantly. So we no longer, at this time, are planning to interrupt the power to any customers in the downtown area, including Davis Island and Harbor Island. Now, this is, of course, a dynamic storm. Things could change. We may reevaluate that in the future, but for now, there's no plans to interrupt the service downtown.
All right, before we open it up for questions, one of the things I want to just let everyone know is that with our homeless population, that we have been focused on that as well. And so we have provided transportation for all of the residents at Tampa Hope, which many of you know is our wraparound residential services for those individuals that are homeless. And we have moved all of those individuals to a shelter. And we have our officers and our homeless liaison, homeless reach out teams that are out in the community trying to encourage our homeless population to transport to one of these shelters. Also, I believe there was a little confusion about the curfew. The conversation was if the original storm prediction was to come to fruition, that being 10 to 15 foot tidal surges and 20 to 30 inches of rain, that we would, based on the outcome of that storm, put a curfew in place, but that curfew would not be put in place without conversations with Hillsborough County. So I think that was misinterpreted as if curfew was going to be placed imminently. So with that, we will open it up to any questions. Yes, and we are, as you know, as we stated before, mandatory evacuation still allows individuals to make personal choices, and so we're doing all we can to encourage individuals not only to evacuate, as you've heard Chief O'Connor talking about the officers visiting the evacuation zones, but also having those conversations with individuals that may be needing shelter. And the issue is that once the winds get so high or the water's in, then we don't have the ability to transport anyone anywhere. So we'll continue to have those conversations until we can. Yeah, everything is a possibility, but right now with the trajectory, if we don't have the damage that was predicted before, and entire neighborhoods are impacted, then there won't be a need to put a curfew in place. If we can block off neighborhoods that have been evacuated and sustain some damage, if we feel confident with the security that TPD can provide, then there won't be a need for a curfew.
Obviously, the tone of this has changed since the traffic has changed. How do you, first of all, keep people understanding that just because the lines on TV or on the internet are different, that this is still something that could change back,
Right.
it's still something that could hit us hard? And then my second question is, have you been satisfied with the patrols you've made around to the different areas, low-lying areas, that people have been obeying the evacuation?
Yes. Well, first of all, again, we can't take these predictions as the gospel. They weren't accurate, completely accurate. No fault of those that are providing the predictions. They have data that's available. It's always subject to change. And every hurricane that we've had, we've seen this. The issue with this particular hurricane isn't necessarily the wind velocity and the damage that the wind's going to do. It's the water, and that you have to be away from. You're not going to stay in your home and be safe from 10 to 15 foot tidal surges. And we're still this is a very serious storm. Even if it stays on the current trajectory, we're not coming out of this unscathed. There is going to be widespread flooding in our city. We're already saturated. As I said earlier, we had our typical summer thunderstorm last night, and we had to shut roads down throughout the city. So we are saturated. We're going to try to get rid of this water as fast as we possibly can, but there is going to be flooding. So individuals have had ample time to take care of their possessions, and they've got a few more hours, but they need to get out of those flood zones. And yes, I've been very satisfied. The police department, I think you indicated that they've made 3 rounds through these locations, and there are individuals that say that they're going to stay. But as I said before, in my 31 years of law enforcement, I've never talked to anybody who stayed through a major hurricane that hasn't said, I'm never doing that again. So people that think that this might be something frivolous, that they can just, trudge through, that's not the case. Mother Nature wins every single time. And if you're facing not only the high winds, but it's the water. When that water comes in, you're not going to be able to get out. We've seen that in New Orleans. We've seen that in Houston. We've seen that in so many other locations.
What kind of conversation with the FEMA administrator, President Biden? What was his message to the region as we face this?
His message was that anything that we need, they are prepared to provide. They've already staged resources. I talked to the regional FEMA director, gosh, probably about an hour and a half ago, who is staging up in the Emergency Operations Center in Tallahassee. And again, reiterated what the president said, that we are here for you, clearly hoping for the best, but understanding that any of these storms that come into the Gulf, it's going to hit somebody's town. And so they just wanted us to know that they are there for us and they'll be here for whatever our needs may be.
Question for Chief O'Brien. Have there been any reports of any burglaries or thefts so far when folks have left today? Have officers responded to any property crimes this afternoon already? You had that warning for penalties, but any reports so far of people breaking in or trying to steal?
No, not yet. And we hope to keep it that way. Yeah, so if it's a burglary or a theft-related offense, the felonies get upped 1 degree. So a third-degree felony would be prosecuted as a second-degree felony would be prosecuted as a first degree. Correct. Yeah, I mean, depending on what the charge is, if it's a third-degree felony and it's one of those two, because, you know, depending on the burglary theft amount, it changes whether it's a third or a second-degree felony. So either way, if it starts out as a third, it'll be a second. If it starts out as a second, it'll go to a first.
What resources, if any additional, I know you can't get into super specifics, but will you have more officers out there patrolling, making sure that all hands are on deck, that people don't try?
Yeah, all TPD scheduled leave time was canceled. So we do have all hands on deck. Tampa PD is currently on an Alpha Bravo deployment, which means the entire department is working either 12 hours on or 12 hours off. So everybody, it's all hands on deck. Everybody's in a uniform. Everybody's on the street, ready to go. We have the department separated. We're kind of used to this, you know, large scale operations. So you either have the hurricane branch or the patrol branch, but we are answering calls for service as usual, and we're ready, willing, and able to respond to any emergency.
And give them an idea how many additional uniform officers, the detectives that'll be out there.
Yeah, so we have approximately 1,000 officers on the street over the course of the next couple of days. Normally, we would have right in the neighborhood of around 600-ish. So there's about 300 to 400 additional resources on the street in uniform as we speak, ready to assist. And the Alpha Bravo deployment, the 12 on, 12 off, does not cease until we know that post-hurricane, you know, recovery and relief efforts are satisfied. For the purposes of this, it's the statewide state of emergency. I mean, that's really anybody's guess at this point, depending on where the track goes. You know, obviously, we're not going to go to work until, you know, it's safe to go to work, so it could be anybody's guess.
I would have to say yes a little more, because, you know, when all you hear is catastrophic and devastating, based on the positioning right at the mouth of our bay, you know, that's not something that you can take in any way, shape, or form as being positive. So again, we don't wish anything negative on our neighbors to the south, but not to be in the Tampa Bay area with that shallow water and those storm surges, you know, is the best prospect for the residents in Tampa Bay.